All right, so let's go ahead and share. Okay, guys, I hope you are able to see the screen. I'll start off. Okay, so hello everyone. Today we have all joined in for a session on the Fortigate firewall, right? Okay, so before we start with the Fortigate firewall, there are a couple of questions always that, what exactly it will be all about, what is the course duration, what it will include, and how will I learn all these things? So just to give you a one-liner answer, we have plan this course in a way that if you start off doing the labs one by one, you would be able to understand each and every topic on the firewall, and it will basically make sure that once you start off, it would be easy for you to understand with the basic configurations and what exactly the firewall is and what is the difference between a firewall and there are other devices that we have, what is a security device, and all these things. So we'll start from the basics just to ensure that everyone is on the same place, and then slowly and gradually we'll talk about a lot of security parameters and infrastructure environment, and basically everything that a firewall should have, and as a firewall administrator you should also know. Okay, so we will be covering of all those things. Now let me go ahead and share my presentation with you guys, so give me 1 minute. All right. Okay. So I hope you guys are able to see the screen. Yes. Everybody can maybe put it in the chat window. Everyone can see the screen.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
you just be little loud. Your voice is a little slow.
Oh, is it so? Is it any better now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, guys. So we are going to talk about today Fortigate Firewall, which is a market leader. It's one of the market leaders. Now, why should anybody be interested, or why should anybody be believing the fact that Fortigate is a market leader, right? So what we are going to do is we'll be taking you with facts and figures, and then we'll start off that why we need to go through the Fortigate, right? Okay. All right. So first of all, before even we go ahead, and delve into the concept of FortiGate and firewall and everything, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unmute you guys, okay? And let's have this as a interaction between what exactly things is all about. Okay, so let this be an interactive session, and I'll take the questions. So let's keep the questions for the end of the session, but I'll be asking you questions in the middle of the session. So I hope and I want you guys to interact as much as possible. So, okay, so I'm allowing you to unmute yourself as of now. Okay, now moving ahead. The first thing that we always look for is that whenever we are talking about a firewall, right? I mean, there's a lot of concepts and everything, okay, firewall can do this and that and everything. But let's just start from the basics. Let's just start with the with the letter A. Okay. Firewall versus router. I mean, router is also a networking device. Firewall is also a networking device. But what do you think is that a firewall can do and a router cannot? What do you guys think? I mean, just asking you guys from your own experience, maybe you have worked on any firewalls, and what do you think is the difference between the firewall and the router? What do you guys think?
That is all about the, I mean, the router don't have the connection table. It is already differentiation that.
Right. That's I would say the basic, or the I would say the one of the most important differentiation between a router and a firewall, that it's the connection table. Right. Okay. All
And
right.
some security less product router is a security less product, right?
Right. Security is also, I mean, you can also apply some security at the router level as well.
But
It's a
router
basic
can,
level.
but router
It's a
cannot
basic
do the
level security.
layer 7 inspection in firewall.
Very good. Layer 7 inspection.
And
Lovely.
there is a stateless and stateful concept. So it is a router is stateless.
right? Correct. Okay, so I think you guys quite have a good understanding of what exactly is a firewall and a router. So basically, the reason why I'm asking this question is also because a lot of times, so there was a one of my student was attending an interview in BT, okay, and he was having experience of around 5 years, and he has worked on firewalls for 2 years, and 3 years was basically the networking background. So he was asked, what do you think is the difference between the router and a firewall? So you was also about, we have the session table and, it's a security and all that stuff. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of time, different companies also start off with this just to know that is the candidate has just crammed up the definitions and he knows just theoretical, or does he also knows practical information, right? When it comes to the devices, does he have practical knowledge or is it like a theoretical knowledge, right? So that is what the concept was behind asking this question. And we are going to take this course in a very, very, very practical way, that whatever the labs are, we'll be doing those labs and you'll be able to understand the concepts of that. Okay. All right. Now, for people who are not having any experience whatsoever, or let's say they are basically freshers, or maybe, initial 1 or 2 years of experience, doesn't know much about the routers and the firewalls. For those guys, let me go ahead and just repeat this. So whenever we are talking about a router, okay, we are always, looking for a router as a routing device, maybe making sure that it has the right information, right routing information, right routes, so that if in case I need to basic access any resources, doesn't matter if it is private or public, I would be able to access them if the router has the routing information, right? Or routing table, basically. So if you can let me know, what is the first thing a router checks? Let's say, for example, I have an IP 10.1.1.1, okay, and I need to access google.com. What is the first thing the router is going to look for?
Routing towards the destination. Is it available or not?
Okay.
Gateway.
Gateway. The router is going to look for the gateway or the source IP?
The source IP towards the gateway, that.
Right. Okay. So router is going to, as one of you said, that it's going to check the route as well. So can I say that this would be considered as a route lookup? Yeah. Anything is basically a route lookup, right? I need to first of all find out that whether I have a way to find to get to that particular destination. So if my destination is Google, okay, do I have any route? Do I have any path that I can use to go through that and get to the destination that we have? Doesn't matter if it's a static route, doesn't matter if it is a dynamic route. What matters is I need to have a route, right? So I can consider that to be a route lookup. Yes. Anything else apart from this, or what is the next action plan when it comes to the route lookup? So I'm done. I'm looking at the route. I got the route. What is the next action plan?
So
What
it
is the
will
router
be
looking for?
checking the policy, if there any route map or some any accesses is configured
Okay.
towards the destination.
So what is the right terminology when it comes to the router? Is it policy or is it ACL?
ACL.
ACL. Okay.
Inbound and outbound truth.
Inbound and outbound. Okay. As an interface you're talking about, or the ACL that you're talking about?
Normal policy only. All to all.
Okay.
All to all.
Okay. All right. So ACL is basically what? Access control list. What does it do? What does an ACL do?
It allow and deny the things, whatever we have applied on the interface.
By default, that will deny all the connections by default.
By default. Okay.
Based on the source and
That is
destination
called
will be
implicit
verified.
denial. Implicit
Okay.
denial by default enable. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. So in a way, we are saying is that the ACL is basically helpful in determining what is allowed and what is not. Right.
Yes. Even at the port level. Yeah.
Even
Sorry,
at the port level. Absolutely.
but can you just the TA can talk? Can understand very well. Too many people talking.
You want me to repeat something?
Yes, can you say the informations, not the people, because I can't understand from them.
The table. Okay. See, what we are discussing is that whenever there is a traffic which basically reaches your router, okay, there are certain things which a router looks for, or there are certain things which the router does before it sends the traffic off, right? So the first thing is basically a route lookup. Route lookup basically means that I'm going to look into the routing table, okay, and I'm going to find out whether I have a particular route to the destination. Now my destination is google.com. Okay, so do I have a route? Do I have any path to get to this destination? If yes, then the second action plan is to look for the ACL. Does my ACL, or does my access control list allow me to allow the traffic, or is denying the traffic, right? That is the job of a router as well. Now when I'm talking about ACL, when I'm talking about route lookup, a firewall also does that. No problems at all. A firewall also does that. It also looks for the route lookup and also look for policies and the ACLs in place. But there's one difference when it comes to the router and the firewall. Most of you guys have already said that, but for the people who are freshers and not much aware of the firewalls and the router, for them, see what happens is, if this is the source IP, this guy needs to get to the destination of 164.100.1.1, which is my google.com. Okay, the router is going to check the ACL. Okay, ACL says you are allowed. Okay, let's say we have an ACL which says anything which is coming with the IP, or which is coming from 10.1.1.0/24, if the destination is 00, okay, which is basically any, you are allowed. Okay, so anything from this particular source IP would be allowed. All right. Now, what is going to happen is that if I'm trying to access Google, if I'm trying to access Facebook, Instagram, whatever, it doesn't matter for me, because over here, this is default. Now, default basically means that anything is allowed for me, right? So I would be able to access the google.com because I have a route look. I check that I have a route. I have an ACL in place. All right. So what will happen? Okay. Now, one more thing, let me ask you this. Let's say route lookup done. All right, ACL done, I'm allowed as well. What is the next action plan? What do you think the router is going to do next? It's not going to do anything. I mean, its job is done. It is going to allow the traffic. That is it. Okay. Now we also know that since the source IP and a destination is google.com, so google.com always works on 443, right? Port. Now, if it is 443, should we expect a three-way handshake, or should we not?
In the router.
Yes.
No, I mean, not in the router, but the client machine. Should the client machine initiate a three-way handshake, or should it not?
Definitely.
Yes,
Definitely
yes.
it will.
It will definitely.
Yes.
Right. So it will be a SYN packet, right? Now, let's say, for example, I'm using 51,365. Let's say it's a source port. Okay. Destination port 443. ACL says allowed. Okay. Now tell me one thing. If there is a SYN ACK coming back, would this traffic be allowed, or is going to be denied?
Denied.
Going to be denied. Why?
We don't have any reverse route.
No ACL, right? No. So the problem is that ACL is
Unidirectional.
unidirectional. Absolutely right. Okay. So even if I have to ensure that the google.com is accessible for this particular guy, I would have to make not just one ACL. I have to make two ACLs, right? One would be for the in, and one would be for out. Am I right? So in and out, there'll be two ACLs for us, right? Now tell me one thing. This is the same traffic. I mean, it's not two different individual traffics, right? It's the same traffic, the same communication, right? You can consider this as a same communication. Now, logic says that if it is the same communication, right? Guys, mute yourself. So if it is the same communication, right? there should be a better way to ensure that I would be able to, use just one policy and make sure that I'm able to access that particular resource, right? So one of the ways, a firewall is different from a router is that rather than creating two ACLs for the same communication or for the same traffic, I would have just one policy. Okay, and that one policy would be able to allow the traffic from inside to outside as well as from the outside to inside. Now, how does the firewall is able to do this? See, the firewall is able to do this by the help of something which we have already discussed a little. It's called as a connection table, right? Now, that's the one of the major or the very, very important criteria which differentiates a firewall from the router is the firewall table or a connection table or a session table. All right, there are different names which has been given, but basically the work is the same. So you can call it as a session table as well. You can call it as although it is not being said much, but a couple of books do say this. So firewall table, session table, connection table, this basically means just one thing. What? See, a session table is source IP, destination IP, source port, destination port, and then we have something which is called as the session ID. Okay, and we have also something which is called as time or as a timestamp. Okay, now this all information consist or they are collectively called as the session table. Okay, now timestamp, let's say for example, what is the time right now? Okay, so then let's say this is 2:18 p.m. right? Source IP is 10.1.1.1. Destination IP is 164.100.1.1. Okay, source port 51365, destination port 443, and session ID, let's say for example, let's just give this at the rate 175. Okay, it's a basically an alphanumerical number which is in the session table of the firewall. Okay, now this basically ensures that whenever there is a traffic coming back, for in our case a SIANET, right, the firewall is going to check this table. Okay, and it's going to look for this information, and the firewall will see that, okay, the source is 10.1, destination is 1.1, this is the port, this is the destination, and I'm getting a reply as a SIANET, and it has the same information. The port is 443, and the other port is also 51365, which is matching the entry in the session table. So looks like this is a reply traffic. I'm going to allow this traffic on the same policy. Okay, I do not have to create another policy. I'm going to use the same policy and I'm going to allow that. Okay, so this is how a firewall is different from a router. Okay, router, it checks the ACL and then forgets about the traffic. It doesn't matter, it doesn't bother. But then the firewall or the route, yes.
Are we, excuse me, yeah, sorry. So instead of like normal ACL on the router, we can create like zone-based firewall or zone-based policy we can enable. So might be it will be maintain the session table on the router, correct?
So you're saying that if you create a zone on the firewall,
Yeah, like modular policy, class map, and all the things, or zone-based.
no, see again, if a router is able to manage a session, then it is not a router anymore then, right? So a router has certain capabilities and limitations, right? If it is able to do that, then it is not a router anymore. For example, let's say we all know whenever we are talking about a switch, right, our understanding is a switch is always a layer 2 device, right? But we also have a device now which is called as a layer 3 device or layer 3 switch for that matter. Now layer 3 switch also does some for certain functionalities which a router can also do, but you cannot really replace a layer 3 switch with a router. Do you know why? Because a layer 3 switch cannot handle dynamic routing. Okay, but a router can. If a layer 3 switch, let's say for example, in a couple of years, if a layer 3 switch is also able to handle dynamic routing, then you do not really need a router in this, because it has surpassed its limitation and it is now becoming a device which can also use, which can also use certain functionalities which was only and only applicable to a router, right? So a layer 3 switch, if it is able to do a dynamic routing as well, then you really do not need a router. Same concept applies over here as well, that if a router is able to create and manage session tables, and if it is able to use the same policies and look for the information and just allow the traffic on the basis of that, then the router has surpassed its own limitations and basically working at the firewall level, right? So again, there are certain limitations when it comes to the router, and that is the limitation. Okay, router
I
is
have
good.
okay, so I'm totally agree with your definition, but as you just mentioned that if the layer 3 switch cannot perform the dynamic routing, I have a doubt on this, but I think they can perform the dynamic routing as well. But the major difference between a layer 3 switch and a router would be on the physical level, wherein the router provides a different types of ports wherein we can connect the WAN connections, and whereas the layer 3 switch would not give us that possibility. So that is the basic, I believe, the difference between layer 3 switch and a router.
See, I mean, if you go for a Google search, I mean, right, and just look for the differences between a layer 3 switch and a router, right, you might get maybe 15, 20, or maybe more than that. The idea over here is not that this is also there and that is also there. The idea is that every device has a certain restrictions and limitations, all right, and there is a certain place where every device is required, right? For example, if I have to connect, let's say 20 devices, right? I do not need a router. I need a switch, right?
Yeah.
If I need to, have different connections between different networks, I need a router over there, right? There are certain, I would say star sign that a router can also do that job, a layer 3 switch can also do that job, and a firewall can also do that job. For example, a startup, if a company is just a startup, maybe just 10 people or 15 people, you do not need anything. You just need a small level firewall. It will do basically a job of your switch, your router, and a firewall, right? So again, situations and on what exactly the situation is, or the network diagram is, or the company's growth is, that depends on a lot on the network that you are basically working with, right? So again, every device has its own limitations and place where it basically functions better. Okay, your answers are absolutely right, but what I'm trying to say over here is that it's just the matter of a little bit beneficial over the other device, right? Because as I said, a router, a great product when it comes to routing protocols. It is a great product when it comes to connecting different networks, right? With dynamic routing protocols, it's absolutely brilliant, right? But when it comes to inspection, let's say for example, if I need to apply some security inspections to it, a router basically cannot do that job, right? For security inspections of application control, or maybe IPS, or maybe AV, antivirus, I need a different device for that, right? That is what basically we are talking about over here. That what exactly is the difference between a firewall and a router. So this is what we're discussing. Okay. So it also says that every firewall, let's just to give you a one-liner. So every firewall is a router, but not every router is a firewall, right? So absolutely right that every firewall is a router, because every firewall is able to manage routing, can do static routes, can do dynamic routing as well, right? So whatever a firewall, whatever a router can do, a firewall can also do that, plus some additional benefits to that. Okay. All right. Now let's first of all, this is just a difference between what exactly this a firewall and router is. Now let's talk about why Fortigate. I mean, there are so many firewalls out there, right? We have Palo Alto, we have Checkpoint, we have SourceWire, we have CyberRoam, we have SonicWall. Then why do we need Fortigate? I mean, it's just one vendor out there, right? So let's talk about why do we need Fortigate for now. Okay, and couple of years, maybe 2 years, 3 years, let's 2018-19, there was a huge spike in the requirement and the demand of the Fortigate firewall. Let's talk about that for some moment. So Fortigate, easy to implement and instant, stepping stone into the security demand. Yes, so this is this is I added off in the line over here. The reason is that see, let's say for example, I always talk about from my own experience. I have around 12 years of experience in the field. So when I was, into this, starting off with the networking, and I, started learning CCNA, and then I started learning CCNP. I went till CCI, and I did the examination for that as well. So while I was doing that, CCNP till CCNP, it's all about routing, switching, BGP protocols, and all the kind of information, or your knowledge is mostly on the network, on the routers, on the switches, and all those stuff, right? But when you surpass that, okay, and then you go into CCNP security, then basically you're talking about security, right? ASA, you're talking about ASA firewalls. So a stepping stone into security domain is why, because FortiGate firewall basically makes it a little bit easier to understand the concepts of the security firewalls, and it becomes easy to handle the firewall as well. Because if you have worked upon, let's say Palo or a Checkpoint, you'll notice that there's a lot of features and there's a lot of things on the same page. Okay, which is not really a bad thing. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is that when it comes to implementation, this is much crisp and clear. Okay, that is what I mean. You have all the options and everything there, but then my point is it is a little crisp and clear. It becomes easy for a refresher or maybe a guy who is new in the security field to get a concepts a little early as compared to the other firewalls. Okay. All right, Soho to enterprise. Soho to enterprise basically means that you have small office to home office, which is, as I said, a startup network, maybe 5 people, 10 people, or maybe a couple of machines, routers, and switches, to enterprise level, to thousands of users and thousands of devices in the environment. Gartner report. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about Gartner report. Anybody have any idea what exactly is a Gartner report? Hands up. Anybody know what exactly is a Gartner report?
It tells about the leading firewalls products market.
Okay.
And
okay. Right. So Gartner report is basically an entity or an organization which gives you ratings. All right. Now this rating is not just for the security products or the firewalls. It is for even routers, switches, SD-WAN, WAN optimization, security WAN, a lot of other technologies and other domain as well. But Gartner report basically is an entity which has certain, uh, just like a checkpoint or checklist, which they need to ensure before they give you a security rating. Now, why they provide a security rating? Just like you would like to know that, these are the top 5 songs, or these are the top 10 songs, all right, or these are the top 5 products in the market, or these are the 5 top 5 mobiles in the market. Just like that, you have Gartner report, which basically talks about these are the top 5 firewalls on the market, and the reason behind why these are the top 5 in the market, right? So this is what exactly a Gartner report talks about. Okay, now let's see. So
Okay,
we start off.
Can you please, sorry to interrupt, can you please repeat the significance of Soho to enterprise point?
See, Soho to enterprise is Soho is small office, home office.
Yeah.
So small office, home office basically means that the the product range of FortiGate firewall basically start off from a very small concept of Soho, where you might need 8 people or 10 people, just a couple of devices, to enterprise level where you have thousands of devices, right? So that is what the concept was, that it can handle 10 people, it can also handle 10,000 people. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. All right. So first slide that we started off was market leader, and then it was Fortigate. So why is it market leader? See, this is called as a Magic Quadrant. Okay. Now, when we say, guys, mute yourself. Okay. All right. Now, market leader, right? Gartner. Okay. All right. Now, market leader, Gartner report and Magic Quadrant. What these things are? See, whenever you're talking about Magic Quadrant, see, quadrant basically means that we can all understand this. This is quadrant. Let me just number this up. First, second, third, and fourth. Okay. Now, quadrant. This is basically divided in one of the ways over here is that this is called as the completeness of vision. Okay, and this is called the ability to all right, I think I got myself on mute. Anyways, okay, so the completeness of vision, what exactly this means? Completeness of vision basically means that what is the company's vision for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line? Where does the company look, and what are its goal, and what exactly is the company doing so that it can basically help the future in the next 10 years or 20 years? Okay, that is the completeness of vision. Now, when it comes to ability to execute, right? Ability to execute is basically the same stuff. So you have a a goal for 10 years. How quickly and efficiently you are slowly and progressing towards that goal that we have, that is called as ability to execute. Now, on these two criteria, the quadrant is made, where this is called as the first one, also called as the niche players. I hope you guys are able to see this, right? Niche players. Niche players basically means a lot of people who are doing what the market is requiring right now. Okay, so this quadrant is basically what the company or what the market requires right now. Okay, they might not have a great vision for the next 10 or 15 or 20 years. They might not have a great execution plan, but whatever is required right now, they would be able to give you that. Maybe what is required for the next 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, not maybe not much, but you can say it's like a quick fix. Okay, then you have something which is called as the visionaries. Visionaries are sophos and force point. Basically what they are doing is, when we say visionary, what the Gartner is trying to say is that their plan of action or their target or their goal for the 10-20 years is great, absolutely fine. But when it comes to the ability of execution, right, the ability to execute, that is not really up to the mark. Okay, they are a little bit, I would say, a little up to the mark, or maybe a little bit lower than that. They have a great vision, no problem at all, but they are not quickly and efficiently executing those tasks. Okay, so the sophos and force point comes into the category of visionaries. Then the third one is called as challengers. What are challengers? See, challengers basically means their ability to execute is like is impeccable. They are executing quite fast. They are able to meet the market demands, and whatever is required right now, they are able to execute that. Okay, Juniper Networks. So Juniper, just to tell you, Juniper Networks was a couple of years back. Juniper was also in the leader quadrant. Now it has shifted to challengers. Okay, Huawei is coming up. Cisco is in the challengers as well. Okay, now the next is called as the leaders, which is the last one. Leaders are basically those guys whose ability to execute is impeccable as always, and their target and their vision is also absolutely brilliant. So they are targeting their next 10 years or 20 years, and what will be the future will be look like, and how they are basically helping a better future. And also they are making sure that their ability to execute the plan of action to get to that particular vision or that plan for or that future is also good. Okay, that is what the category of leaders is all about. Okay, so Palo Alto is over here. Fortinet, we are very much so. We are getting to know that Fortinet may be giving an equalizer, or maybe a little bit over in the coming 2 years or 3 years, maybe. Let's say, I don't know, maybe. But Palo Alto is also doing a great job over there. And we have Fortinet, and then we have Checkpoint. Checkpoint is slipping down a little bit for some reasons, and Fortinet and Palo is really high in the market these days. So I always suggest and I always say that you always should look for the market and what exactly the market is demanding, right? So always look for the leader quadrant, and not just not just for the firewalls, even for the SD-WAN or WAN edge or different technologies that we have, even for the cloud, right? So look for those particular location, particular Gartner report. Look for the leader section and prepare yourself for these products. What will happen is, since you are preparing yourself for the leader quadrant, okay, you will always be rest assured, you will always be in demand. Why? Because if you know Palo, if you know Fortigate firewall, let's say for example, let's say in the leader quadrant in the cloud, you have AWS, right? So if you know Palo, if you know Fortigate, and you know AWS, do I have to tell you that you'll get a job? Do I have to tell you that you'll get a good package? I do not have to tell you all these things, because this it's understood, right? So we always talk about, we always say, and we always suggest whatever is required by the market right now, okay? And whoever is in a leader quadrant, go for those guys, because that will basically help you push yourself to the next level as well. So let's say for example, if you are right now, so just to give an example, one of my student, he was in 8 lakh of package. He have gone through the firewall, and he have gone through some certain cloud courses as well, and then now, as of now, he is into quite a good package, 80% of hike, and good MNC he is working with. So my point over here is that I always suggest all my students to ensure and make sure that you are always learning some technology which is always in the leader quadrant, because leader quadrant is basically people or vendors or companies who are going to stay in the market, and they are relevant, and they are also doing a good job with the product that they are basically providing. Okay, so Palo, Fortigate, and Checkpoint, these three are the leaders. If you want to learn firewall, you should go with these three firewalls. Okay, all right, now let's again come back to the Fortigate firewall. All right, okay, so why Fortigate? See, a lot of companies have started doing this, that rather than having, so see, let's say example, I'll keep it very simple. Okay, so let's say you have a laptop, right? What does your laptop have? Maybe, oopsie, let's say your laptop, here is my pen. Okay, so let's say your laptop has an i5 processor. Let's say you have 8 GB of RAM. Okay, and you have on top of this Windows 10. i5 8 GB is fine enough for Windows 10, but then let's say for example, you have to use let's say for example, you might have to use VMware. Okay, and in the VMware, you are creating a lab for yourself, and since you are creating a lab for yourself, you need a lot of resources. Now suddenly this 8 GB of RAM is basically not helping you anymore. You need a little bit more, so you thought, chalo, let me go ahead and add 8 GB more. Right now, this is a Windows laptop, this is fine, you are an end user, no problem at all. But when it comes to security devices, they do not function like that, right? Whatever their hardware resources is, it is just like that. You cannot really add more to it. But there are a couple of devices who does that. My point over here is that FortiGate firewall has something which is called as the ASIC chips. Now what is ASIC chips? See, ASIC chip is like a dedicated chip apart from your CPU and memory, which helps the traffic move along quickly in the firewall. Okay, so all the inspection, okay, all the security inspection, okay, is basically done by this guy. Okay, now as per whatever your product is, it's going to be a little bit different. So for example, look over here, you have a Fortinet 40 ASIC, this is called as NP6, right? We have NP8 as well, we have NP10 as well. Now it depends on the product that you are having. Okay, now what will going to happen is that when it comes to the NP6 or NP10, this basically all is on the basis of whatever your product is. Higher product, higher end product will give you a higher ASIC chip. A lower end product might give you a lower chip, but you will get this ASIC chip. My point over here is that the CPU and the memory is basically required for you or for the traffic to be processed. Once the processing it is done, once the inspection is done, then it is forwarded to the exit interface. The ASIC chip basically helps in this, where the traffic goes to your CPU, and now the CPU will not going to process the traffic. The CPU is going to redirect the traffic to your ASIC chips. Okay, ASIC chip is going to go ahead and look for the processing and scanning of the traffic, and then it is going to exit. So what is going to happen is your CPU is always free. Okay, there is when it comes to the Fortigate hardware, the best thing, or the one of the best thing about this firewall is that the CPU and the memory spike is comparatively less as if you compare this with any other firewall vendors out there, right? Because your CPU and memory is mostly free. Your 40 ASIC or your ASIC chips are being used for scanning of the traffic. You might have, I'm not sure if you guys, anybody have gone through any firewall. Have you ever heard about PPP, parallel path processing? We'll talk about this in the course, but PPP is just basically one of the ways of saying that your traffic is basically getting scanned and processed at the same time. Okay, we'll talk about this in quite detail in the course, but ASIC chip basically helps in that. Okay, all right, now FortiGuard update network. So FortiGuard update is basically one of these are servers. Okay, these servers basically handle all kind of updates, signature updates, antivirus, IPS, and application control, everything, so that your firewall is always up to the mark, and it is always up to date with the right information, so that if in case there is any known attack, your FortiGate firewall will be updated quickly. Okay, all right. Now, customer hardware purpose built for security basically depends on whatever your product that you're hiring. Whatever product that you're purchasing, it is based on whatever the requirement. So the product cycle or the product range is on the basis of the security infrastructure, meaning whatever kind of security infrastructure that you guys have, you will have a product related to that. Okay, all right. Now, coming back to something which is called as the course. I mean, because end of the day, what I'm going to learn from this, right? This is what it matters. Now, what we are going to learn is this. We are going to divide or subdivide the course into two parts, which will be called as the security and the infrastructure. Okay, the security is mostly all the security concepts of the FortiGate firewall. The introduction, the policies, the NAT, the authentication, the logs, web filtering, application control, IPS, SSL, VPN, right? There's all the security part of that. FortiGate infrastructure basically talks about or covers a topic which is mostly on the infrastructure or the design level, or the concepts of how would you deploy a firewall in the network. So routing, VDOM is basically called as virtual domain. Okay, now virtual domain, if anybody is coming from a Cisco background, you might have heard about something which is called as a virtual context, right? And anybody know this virtual context, right? So this virtual context is basically in Cisco, you can call this as a virtual firewall, right? So over here, we call this as virtual domain, right? Concept is still the same. It's just that it's a little difference of saying. Terminology is a little bit different. Okay, that is what it means. Then you have something which is called as the IPsec VPN. Everyone knows that, but we are going to talk about this in great detail about what exactly IPsec is, what is a VPN, and then how do you basically deploy this on the IPsec. Okay, all right. Now, high availability. Anybody? किसी को पता है what is VRRP, GLBP?
Actually, I have muted all because due to disturbance, so we can ask later.
No problem at all. Chalo, so basically high availability is all about VRRP and GLBP. So VRRP and GLBP is a way of making sure that you always have one device, so that if in case let's say for example you have a device, and for some issues or some physical issues or cable issues or maybe electricity or current issues, that device goes down for some reason, then you have a different device that can basically help to ensure that traffic is automatically directed towards that particular device. And for the end user, there is no network issues or no connectivity issues for that matter, right? Your network will always be up, and you will always have a stable and stable network, which can also help in issues, just like if in case one of the devices goes down, you have another one to handle all the traffic. That is high availability. Fortigate firewall has something which is called as FGCP, which is Fortigate clustering protocol. This is a proprietary protocol. We'll talk about this in great detail in the course, but the concept is more or less the same. A little bit difference of implementation, but the concept is more or less the same in the high availability. Diagnostic performance. See, diagnostic performance basically is mostly about troubleshooting. When it comes to troubleshooting, what commands do you use, how do you use them, and what is the approach that you should go for, right? What I normally do is I always talk about from my own experience of 12 years, that if in case you are approaching any kind of an issue in the network, how would you go about and troubleshoot that particular network? Okay, what is the thing that you should be looking for before even you start, before you jump towards a conclusion? What are the things that you should verify? Because end of the day, a lot of time it happens that you might have given a statement that okay, it's because of such and such issue and this is not happening, but then it turned out to be a different problem for that matter, right? So diagnostic performance is all about troubleshooting. I'm going to guide you with my own experience, and will tell you that what exactly is needed for a firewall administrator or anybody who's basically handling a firewall. What is an expectation, and how does you should be going for a troubleshooting guide. Okay. Now let's go ahead and open up the session for a Q&A. Okay, now let me unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. RB. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we can compare VDOM with VRF, right? Hello.
Yeah, can you be loud? RB, are you there?
Yeah. So we can compare VDOM with VRF. It is fine, or
That is context, VRF.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Hello,
Hello?
Nilesh here.
Yeah,
Hello?
go ahead.
My question
Yes,
is,
I have one question. So I saw your
Type one by
agenda, but I don't see any subjects regarding SD1.
Yeah, SD1, you can contact us. I will share the numbers where you can contact us. Okay.
we did syllabus is looking fine for me. Is it you guys are adding the 40 manager or 30 analyzer in the same?
Yeah, that RV, are you there? That RV will confirm on that part.